then y'all spat. It hits that me, that's facts. I'm still coming for a play. When I hear something, shut up, 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 shut up.
What's good, everybody? Welcome to the series I'm calling Deck Builders Deep Dive, where we go into some more niche aspects of deck building, and I talk about them. We talked about why 5-drops are a trap, CMC. You guys gobbled that up. We also talked about token engines. If you want to go check out those 2 videos, links are in the description. But today we're going to talk about Whittle engines. And no, I'm not talking about smaller than your average engines that you're saying in a cute voice. No. In my opinion, these engines are incredibly important for deck building, and I wanted to dive into them a little bit deeper. So, if that sounds interesting to you, make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. So, a Whittle engine isn't an actual, term in Magic yet, but my personal definition for a Whittle engine is any card that can provide repeatable value, but that value being something that gets us closer to the end of the game, whether that be damage, whether that be mill, whether that be poison counters in the case of this one really annoying card. The idea of these is to whittle your deck closer to winning the game. The most well-known of these Whittle engines are cards like Impact Tremors, which damage opponents for us having creatures ETB. These are great in a creature-heavy deck or a token deck like Kranko Mob Boss, where you're flooding the board with said creatures. While the other well-known form of Whittle engines are cards like Zulaport Cutthroat that provide a life drain when creatures die, which work great in decks like Teysa or Zav Scion. While the third most well-known type of Whittle engine are Spellslinger payoffs like Gutter Snipe or Erebor Flamesmith, which provide pings for us playing instants and sorceries, which these types of cards are great at putting our opponents on timers. That's kind of their whole point. My favorite part about this Spellslinger subsection of these, though, is there's a lot of off-color options that I think a lot of people don't know about. My favorites being Professor Onyx and Rona Shieldred's Faithful, which could definitely be some good Whittle engines in some sort of Esper Spellslinger deck or control deck. Not to mention Witherbloom Apprentice, Golgari Spellslinger ping. I think this could actually work alongside stuff like Zulaport Cutthroat, especially if your sacrifices come in the form of instants and sorceries like Bone Shards. I think these could really go together. Past that, though, and I guess the whole point of this video is to just show you how many Whittle engines there are. Pinger creatures are another great example, like Blisterspit Gremlin or Cinder Pyromancer, that can provide direct damage by tapping and often come with a built-in way to untap, whether that be a creature dying or casting a red spell or casting an instant or sorcery, making these some really solid Whittle engines in the right deck to support them. You can also just put your opponent's cards straight into the bin with mill Whittle engines. Now, every time I bring these up, people will tend to tell me that if your main goal isn't milling, that these aren't very good. I'm gonna be honest, I disagree, buddy. I think milling can bring you home the game easier by just removing your opponent's ways to win the game a lot of the time. And I understand a lot of people's argument with this is what if you're against the graveyard deck? What if you're against Reanimator? What if you're against Spellslinger that cares about stuff being in the grave? What if you're against a Lands Matter deck? I'm going to tell you, as the Reanimator player, because that's pretty much almost every deck I've ever made that I've stuck with is Reanimator. I love it. Being milled any instance, any sorceries, any enchantments and artifacts a lot of the time, I'm not gonna see those again. They're creature reanimator decks. Sure, you could hit 3 or 4 of my big bomb creatures that I plan on reanimating. I only run 1 card that does mass reanimation. I still don't get to do all those. I have to pick one, and then the other 3 are just lost, and I don't have the chance to draw into them, cast them with my mana late game. Big part of why Reanimator works. You're controlling the early and mid game with these big cheated out threats, and then late game, you've still got more threats to just hard cast. So, I'm telling you from experience, the amount of times that I have been milled 3 cards, and those 3 cards are an Animate Dead, a Regrowth, and then a land, womp. And this applies to the other decks we talked about, Spellslinger, lands. In the land deck, you could be hitting creatures, artifacts, enchantments that they can't get back. Oh man, did I just mill your Approach of the Second Sun? Dang, did I mill your Scute Swarm in your landfall deck? Oh man. Wait. You're telling me that I milled your Intruder Alarm? Oh, I'm so sorry. Except I'm not, because I'm cold. Very annoying. And this is all not to even mention if you're in the mill deck, or you yourself have some recursion sub-themes to play with other people's graveyards. But let's get into what some of these mill Whittle engines even look like. Keep in mind, the real idea behind these is to find a Whittle engine that works well with your deck, your playgroup, and your power level. If your games go long in a more upgraded pre-con power level, these engines are invaluable as they will output tons of damage over the course of longer games to help you bring those games home. So back to the mill thing, if you're flooding the board with a bunch of lands in a Lands Matter deck, maybe a Ruin Crab would provide 9 cards worth of removal every time you played a land. That's not bad. Or maybe you're a pinger deck, where something like Deep Muck Desperado would provide some good mill on each player for each ping. My favorites of these are cards like Teferi's Tutelage and Psychic Corrosion that supply mill to the opponents for us drawing, which in Commander, we're drawing a lot. in large quantities. So yeah, you're going to get milled, especially if your commander cares about stuff like that, like Nektasar Wheels or Damia Sagestone, which will pretty consistently keep your hand full. These mill engines could be a huge value to you. There's also Mystic Redaction, which is like the same thing as like Teferis, except it's on discard. So if you're doing a lot of like self-discard, this could be cool. Again, Nektasar Wheel list. That'd be pretty good. And like I said earlier, there is a single card that counts as a poison Whittle engine, that card being Bloodroot Apothecary, which provides poison counters whenever someone sacks a non-creature token. So those foods, those bloods, those clues, those treasures, you're getting poisons for all of them, which is really good, especially if you're in like Vazi, Keen Negotiator, or Jolene, where you're just dishing out treasures and stuff like that to other people. You can kind of put a timer on that and be like, yeah, you can use them, just only use 4. Because if you use 5, you're poisoned to death. I think a great, not only like limiter for opponents on how much they're going to use the treasures you're dishing them out. Great way to potentially bring home a game, because in those decks, you're getting way more value for sacrificing those treasures, and if you can put a complete stop to them using them, makes the game a lot easier to win. You can really find these engines for almost any strategy. My 5-color Ghost Shinte Reanimator deck runs Balemerc Leech along with Grim Guardian to drain on ETB with enchantments, along with Wicked Visitor to drain on death on enchantments. Also, Tatsunori gives us a frog that pings when we cast. That's cool. And then there's lands, like being an almost guaranteed resource, having some Whittle engines that are based around lands like Tunneling Geopede or Spitting Lagak, especially in a Lands Matter deck. That's going to be dishing it out. Make the game all the easier to win. Another big thing with these is they're not dealing enough or doing enough that they're really going to get targeted a lot of the time. Impact Tremors and stuff like that might, because of how big they hit. But there's a lot of threats in a Lands Matter deck, so I don't know if the Lagak is necessarily going to get the bad end of a Swords to Plowshare early enough for it to matter for your opponents. And while we're on the subject of a part of the game that's going to be inevitable, let's talk about artifacts, especially with the introduction of treasures, clues, food, all that stuff. They're pretty integral to any game of Magic now. So Whittle engines like Marionette Master or Marionette's Apprentice, if you're in a deck that creates a ton of these sackable tokens, like Prosper Tombbound or Eloise Nephalia Sleuth, you could really start dishing out some serious life loss. We've also got cards like Packdoll Terror and Reckless Fireweaver that provide pings on artifact ETB, which again could get out of hand if you're making a ton of these tokens. So this is where it gets more niche and kind of more show and telly on the channel, where I'm doing what I'm good at and showing you guys some obscure cards. So Ancient Cellar Spawn makes opponents lose life equal to the difference in mana cost of the spell versus what we actually spent to cast it. So if your deck is about like large cost reduction like Rakdos Lord of Riots or Rowan Scion of War, this Whittle engine could seriously end the game. Not to mention tribal commanders like Sarkhan, which has a built-in cost reducer for all the specific creature types. This could just become a normal ping engine, which is fine. There was a new Whittle engine that was spoiled in the new Final Fantasy. I don't know if that's a Worlds Beyond or whatever it's called product, but whatever it is. Y'shtola Knights Blessed is fantastic. It gives you a 2-life drain on opponents and a 2-life gain every time you play a creature that costs 3 or more. So yeah, as someone that routinely plays big old boys, I like this. Altar of the Brood will just mill a card for a permanent ETBing. So again, if you're in the Lands Matter deck, the token deck, anything you plan on flooding the board with anything, just a good card. Also a part of like umpteen combos. We've got Rakish Crew for mercenary decks, Elderfang Venom for elves, Sarkhan's Unsealing for high CMC decks, Locthwain Lancers for knights, Forerunner of the Coalition for pirates, Calistria's Healer for allies, Sir Conrad for graveyard decks, Raven of Fall Omens for decks that plan on doing a lot of targeting and committing a lot of crimes, Epicture of Blood for life gain, Grudge Keeper for voting decks. Yeah, there's even one for voting decks. There's a lot of these, and even more of them that are getting drastically overlooked by some deck list, I think. So, as always, there's a Moxfield list down below if you want to see some of the Whittle engines I've found. Feel free to comment some of your favorite Whittle engines that I may have missed. Make sure to check out that list, like and subscribe. If you want to have a direct hand in the weekly obscure card list that we do, you can become a patron. Starts as low as $1, and you can submit some of your favorite obscure cards and possibly be put on some of those lists with a shout out from me. Merch coming up, website coming up. I'll see you guys.